Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss anything and everything there is to know in the world of fantasy football. As always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And we're back again with another one for you guys. We actually have some stuff to talk about. We're getting to the off season, Anthony. And in the off season, Off-season does impact a lot of players' fantasy values. It actually impacts a lot of the players around them.
Right.
Most notably, I think there's no argument here that Adrian Peterson has been one of the top fantasy running backs ever since he entered to the league until last year.
Oh, God, yeah.
Until last year. So, we talked about this on a football show, but from a fantasy football perspective, it looks like Adrian Peterson, his future as a Viking, or his career with the Vikings, I should say, is pretty much done. Well, the reason why I say this is because Vikings general manager Rick Spellman said the team has not talked to AP or his agents about the running backs contract for the 2017 season.
Right.
So, this is what he said. To Peterson in his contract situation. He said, if nothing happens in the next 2 weeks, he said, Adrian will always be a Minnesota Viking.
Right.
So they have until the third day of the new league year, which starts on March 9th, to pick up his team option. And if they do, the Vikings have to pay him $18 million, including a $6 million roster bonus, if he's on the roster by the third day of the new league year.
Right.
So it really seems unlikely that he's not going to be on the team.
The best part of the whole thing, honestly, was him basically saying, he'll always be a Minnesota Viking, right? Adrian will always be a Minnesota Viking, which is basically the equivalent of you basically telling your girl, but I want to stay friends. We'll always be friends. Lies. Just total lies. It doesn't matter. You're basically just saying that to try and, save face or whatever. He'll always be a Minnesota Viking, which he will. He'll have his jersey retired. He'll be in the Hall of Fame as a Minnesota Viking. It'll be great, right? He's one of the best Minnesota Viking players of all time, depending on how you want to classify Randy Moss or Chris Carter or Van Tarkenton or whoever. He's legitimately one of the best of all time. Problem is, like you said, in March, he turns 32. And as an NFL player, that's old. As a running back, that's ancient. So he's going to be cut from the team, right? He's not going to be traded because who in the good world would pick up that kind of a contract with that much money still on it? He's going to be cut, and at that point, he's going to go to another team. Now, for a fantasy football perspective, you kind of look at it in the sense of, okay, so where does he go? Right? Does he go to the New York Giants, who had Paul Perkins as kind of a good running back, but young, unproven? You don't know if he can actually get the full workload and be a good running back going forward. Does he go to Green Bay, who Senor Ocho Ocho over there at Ty Montgomery was a lead running back? He's a wide receiver. That's something where he could go. Or he could just decide, I want to get all this money and go to the Browns or to the Niners or to the Bears. Or not the Bears because they have a good running back in there. But he could go a couple other different places where it's just you're going to get the money, but you're going to be on a bad team. Right? He could go to the Texans. Problem is the Texans have Lamar Miller, but Lamar Miller's not necessarily one of those workhorse running backs like he used to be back in the day. Also, if you do something like that, the ego comes involved, and he was the best running back in the game for about a decade, and it's kind of hard to swallow your pride and swallow your ego and go from being the guy, someone who we literally thought going into this year would be, the top running back in the league, because, last year he led the league in rushing with 1,485 yards and 11 touchdowns. So why wouldn't we think that at age 31 he can do the same thing? Well, because 31 is different than 30, and eventually your body just kind of decides, okay, we can't do this anymore. We're going to start, breaking down now.
Yeah, and Peterson had his worst year.
By far.
By far. And that 2014 season can kind of be washed away because he was suspended that year.
It was one game, yeah. That was
one
just
game. So I'm not going to count that here as his worst year because he was healthy and he was suspended.
Yeah.
But 2016, he did not look like the same guy. Before he tore the meniscus, first 2 games, he just didn't. He just couldn't run behind. He just couldn't run. He didn't look like the same guy.
Yep.
And when he came back in December against the Colts, he didn't look like the same guy either. He sat out the final 2 games, actually, because of an abductor strain he suffered in the first game back. So even when he came back, he got hurt again.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because you want to talk about, it was just, bad luck because he got injured, right? And yes, that is true. Also, as you get older, you get more and more injury prone, right? When you're 25 and you hurt your knee, you can come back and be a beast after that, right? Adrian Peterson back in, 2012. 2012, he came back from a torn ACL. 2012, he was 27 years old, right? It's one thing to come back from 27 than it is at 32, because in those 5 years, your main job is to avoid 11 guys coming at you with their sole purpose of, let's bring him to the ground and let's make sure he try and loses the ball, right? That's their main job. So 5 more years of that is going to take a toll on your body, right? So you're going to get more injury prone as you get older, and you have just as much of a chance of coming back and rushing for 1,000 yards as you do in playing 5 games and rushing for 300 yards, right? You have the exact kind of same chance of that happening. So it's a risk for whatever team that picks him up. Like we said, the Giants, the Jets, the Packers, or whatever, right? All the situations have the possibility of high value, or, you get there and he, breaks down over 3 games. But that's the risk you take with a Hall of Fame running back like Adrian Peterson, who it looks like isn't going to be back with the Vikings anytime soon.
Unless they happen to work out a restructured deal, but who knows? That may not even happen. But
the one thing I will give him is if they do restructure his contract, right, and he comes back and plays for the Minnesota Vikings, it's not like they're, a team like the Dallas Cowboys who had Darren McFadden and Alfred Morris as the backups, right? You have him. Because, Matt Asiata, Jared McKinnon,
Yeah, we've seen them last year as the starting running backs for this team, and they were low-end RB2s, low-end RB3s,
right.
And that's not good for fantasy football. And when Adrian Peterson went down, these 2 guys were the hottest waiver wire pickups. They were droppable by November. That's how bad they were. And as we look forward to the Vikings running back position, as of right now, they got Jeremy McKinnon, Matt Asiata, and if they happen to move on from AP, I do think they're going to address the position in the draft, and this is a pretty strong draft class. But for AP's future and his future fantasy value, I don't think you can treat him as a top fly RB1 anymore. You just can't.
Right.
And I do think he should be still value as a running back, but I don't know if you can start him in your lineup. I honestly think he's going to be a guy no matter where he goes, I think you're going to target him. I think probably the 3rd or 4th round. I would say the New York Giants is probably his best, probably the best team for him to, get some snaps. Probably the most snaps he can get are the Packers. But the reason why I like him with the Giants is because he's playing with a good team around him. He's playing with Eli Manning, who is in the back end of his career. Then you got one of the top receivers in the league in Odell Beckham. And, you got an unproven running back in Paul Perkins, who I really like. And if AP can be anywhere half of what he can do, I do think he can be a a pretty solid fantasy option at your RB2 spot.
Yeah.
So that's my analysis on AP's future fantasy value from right now.
I think I don't think he's like all the way done, because although, you look at it and it's like, wow, he only didn't even have 100 yards rushing. I don't think that continues this year. Like, I think he can come back and be a productive player, but do I think he's a 1,000-yard rusher? No, probably not.
Okay, well, bless you, Anthony.
Sorry.
All right, well, we're
trying to do it as far away from the mic as I possibly could.
Hey, well, nice try there. All right, well, on that note, we're going to take our first break here so Anthony can sneeze again. All right, we're going to take our first break, and when we get back, we're going to talk about Anthony's boy, Rob Gronkowski. And we get back to the Guns to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Well, Anthony, you do have a couple boys when it comes to fantasy football. Most notably, you had a rant about CJ Fedorowicz, but your other boy, Rob Gronkowski, looks like he would no doubt be ready for the 2017 season. After an interview with Kerry Champion at ESPN, he said he will no doubt be healthy for 2017, but Gronkowski has had so many surgeries. He's coming off his third back surgery. He has 8 surgeries as an NFL player by the age 29.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Well, because here's the thing, man. Like, he is unquestionably the best tight end in sports, right? He is the best player because, as good as you want to say, someone like a Travis Kelce is, like, he's really good. Fedorowicz, like, my boy did really well with the Texans, but he's the best, right? And even Bennett on the team is really good too, but Gronkowski is the guy. Problem is, the guy hasn't played in 16 games since 2011, right? That part matters. Like, yeah, he played 15 games the last 2 years, or 2 of the last 3 years, but they were never, like, healthy 16 games. And I get that, like, once you're in the NFL, like, you're basically never healthy by week 13 and on. But it's always something that he has. Like, it's either like a nagging injury that he keeps playing with. I mean, dude had like a punctured lung at one time, didn't he? And he was still like, oh, yeah, I'm going to play. Like, he gets hurt a lot. And, like, the back surgery thing, like, this is the first one he's had since he's been in Arizona. So that's fine. But, like, also, it's one thing if you screw up your, like, wrist, or you screw up your shoulder, or you screw up your foot or something like that. Those things are bad. Those things you don't want to happen. But the back is probably the worst thing, even more than a knee, because at least the tight end, like, it's not – if you have a torn ACL, you can come back in a year and you'll basically not be the same, but close enough. Like, the back stuff lingers, man. That back will hurt you for the rest of your life. And, like, even another sport like basketball, man, where it's, like, not half as intense. Dwight Howard took about a year and a half to get back to what he was. And, I mean, Gronkowski's got time, right? It's not like he's, like, 35 years old. He's still got probably another, like, 7-8 years in the NFL if he wants to play. But, I mean, like, it's getting to a point to where whatever talent he has, which is still a lot of talent, you don't know how much longer he can do this before his body just gets to the point where you can't trust it, right? And by not being able to trust it, the Patriots may all of a sudden decide, let's trade him. But the thing with the Patriots is they tend to take a trade early instead of later, right? If they are not performing or they're, doing things like with Jamie Collins where he was kind of going rogue, then all of a sudden they trade him. And would it surprise you, honestly, if they traded Gronk? Like, I don't think it would surprise me that much considering half the stuff they've done over the last decade and a half.
Yeah, and I did talk about this on the football show about what if the Patriots put together a package deal with Rob Gronkowski.
I love that so much.
And Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, what if that is a package deal?
Like, they just go to the Browns and be like, all right, here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
I know you don't have a quarterback. I got you. I know you don't have a tight end. I got you. No, we have a good tight end. No. I have a tight end for you. Oh, we have a quarterback. Shut up. No, you don't. Here's a quarterback. Here's a tight end. I would like all of your picks. What do you mean? I want all of them. We only have like 5 picks. All of them. I want all of your picks.
Can you imagine being on the phone or in that meeting? Bill Belichick, I want all of them. I want all of them. I want it all.
He was just like,
I want them all.
I want all your.
Dang, can you imagine that? If that did happen, that means the Patriots would get Myles Garrett at number 1, the number 12 pick, and they would have some pretty high draft picks in the 2nd and 3rd round. That is amazing. Wow. If the Browns actually did pull the trigger on that trade.
Well, here's the thing.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I like to live in the world of hypotheticals. So.
Oh, yeah. Hypotheticals are fun. Yesterday, different sport, but we had the NBA trade deadline, and it was fun. So it was like, I wonder who's going to get traded. Oh, you could have Paul George. Oh, you could have Jimmy Butler. No one gets traded. No one cares. Nerlens Noel got traded. He's fine. He's nowhere good. We always live in the situation. The NFL trade deadline comes all the time. Every time with these trades, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever, it's always like, the trade deadline is at noon Eastern, right? Or 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. And it's like, I wonder who gets traded. No one gets traded because the trades happened before that. Jimmy Collins trade happened in like week 4 or something like that, way before the trade deadline. That's where the big trades happen. You get them in the middle of the season when people don't expect it.
The Sam Bradford trade happened before the season. So.
Yeah. Those trades happen not like when it's like or the draft day or on the draft day. That's when these trades tend to happen. It's not right at the deadline. But, for someone like the Browns, right, the Browns they got the 1st pick, they got the 12th pick. They have these picks coming. Then they got the 1st pick of the 2nd round, 51st, 65th, and 98. Yeah, so they got like all these picks, right? They have, if you were basically going to go, we were talking about this. If you were the Patriots and you basically said, all right, you can have Garoppolo, give us your 12th overall pick, and give us your 4th round pick, basically a 1st and a 4th, which is what the Vikings gave up to get Sam Bradford. And I feel like Garoppolo, you would probably trade the same amount for him because less injury prone, younger, stuff like that. Trade that, and then for Gronkowski, it's like, all right, we want your 2nd and 3rd round pick. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. And now you basically have recovered everything that you ever, missed for Deflategate.
Yeah, and from a fantasy football perspective, he honestly, if you look at his numbers from last year, probably the worst year of his career. He only had 25 catches, 540 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he has been probably the only tight end to be in the 1st round for the past 3 to 4 years.
Right.
Do you consider him a 1st rounder coming this year after coming back from their back surgery? Like, I do think he should be the 1st tight end taken, but 1st rounder, do you think that may be a reach a little bit?
I would take Kelsey. Honestly, I would take Kelsey.
You would take Kelsey?
I would take. Now, don't get me wrong. Gronkowski, like I said, he's the best tight end, but that's also assuming he's healthy, right? Like, he is, when healthy, the best tight end, period, end of story.
So
problem is the injury. And I would take Kelsey because, we've seen with,
And we've seen Greg Olsen, too.
Right.
Yeah, so Greg Olsen, Travis Kelsey. So you would rate Kelsey over Gronk?
I would say Kelsey just because I trust Kelsey will do more because we also with Alex Smith, like he loves tight ends.
And the Chiefs might get Tony Romo, so that might kind of increase his value even more.
So, I think with those things, I would take Kelsey. I don't know, I trust Kelsey just a little bit more. I think Kelsey's 80%, 85%, whatever you want to call it, of what Gronk actually is, right? I think they're pretty close in that aspect. And the fact is, Travis Kelsey, he's the same age as Gronk, but the difference is between him and Gronk, while they're both the same age, Gronkowski's played in the league for 3 years, played every single game. He's been in there 3 years, hasn't missed a game. Last year he had 85 receptions for 1,200 yards, or for 1,125 yards. Yeah, First year where he got over the 1,000-yard mark. Doesn't get as many touchdowns, so from that point of view, it's not as good. But, also Gronkowski played 3 games last year, so, what do you want with that?
What do you want? Do you want, production, or do you want, a name? That's the thing about fantasy. I talked about this on Tuesday with the tight end position because of Julius Thomas going to the Dolphins. Mm-hmm. You got to target tight ends that will get a lot of targets, especially in the end zone. Travis Kelsey doesn't get a whole lot of end zone targets because maybe that's because of his quarterback. Mm-hmm. But he does get a lot of targets. He's probably the most targeted player in that offense. He has definitely by far more targets than Jeremy Maclin on that team.
Sure.
And he definitely, I honestly think this year, I think it's going to be between Travis Kelce and Greg Olsen. It looks like Greg Olsen was one of the really good targets for Cam Newton. It has been for the past 2 years. So when you're thinking about drafting Gronk, I do suggest think about the risk. I know he's playing with Tom Brady, probably the best quarterback of all time. But do you want players that are durable? You want them that are durable, and I do think you have to. I think it's safe to maybe pass on Gronk in the first round, but if he's there maybe in the late second or the third, I think you have to take a chance on him, unless you really think Travis Kelce is better. And I do think Travis Kelce should be. I think he could be the best tight end in football next year. I think he can. He has that type of talent, but in fantasy football wise, I think he can be the best tight end in fantasy football too, Anthony.
Yeah.
I really do think so.
No, that's the thing with Kelce. Like, we've seen him play. We've seen him do all these different things where he stays on the field to where Gronk, every year, man, it's just like by week 12, you're just like either A, hoping he can stay healthy the rest of the year, or B, hoping he can come back in the playoffs for the Patriots. Like, that pretty much happens every year with him, right? One of those two things will happen, and we probably should have followed this advice last year with Adrian Peterson, right? We probably should have realized, he's a little bit older. He's not the same kind of guy. But, we're still like, he just led the league in rushing. He's going to do it again. Maybe not. Gronkowski's going to, be the best tight end in the NFL again. Maybe, but also he could get injured in week 7, and then all of a sudden, bam, you spent your first-round pick on the guy that you only get 7 weeks out of.
Yeah, so I do think that Gronk is probably going to slide a little bit unless I really do think Gronk is going to be drafted. I do think he's going to be one of the top tight ends drafted, but I just think there's too much of a risk there. But yeah, Anthony, I have to agree with you. I think I would go with Travis Kelce too over Gronk, just based on what I've seen. And Kelce, he hasn't been injured for 3 years. He's played all 16 games, and that's huge.
Right.
That's huge for me. All right, well, we're going to take our last break, and when we get back, we're going to discuss multiple quarterbacks. We have multiple quarterbacks that were in the news this week with their respective teams or possible their former teams. And we're going to discuss the quarterback carousel when we get back to the Going to Meet Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the Going to Meet Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. And so we had a lot of quarterback news this week. We had Kirk Cousins, a report of the quarterback not going to sign a long-term deal with Washington before the franchise tag deadline. So there's that. And then we got Jay Cutler, who is being shopped by the Bears. And there's been another report on top of that saying that he's contemplating retirement. And then we got Tyrod Taylor, who has been medically cleared. So that might change his outlook with the Bills and the Bills quarterback search. And then we got Colin Kaepernick, who just had a meeting with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch said it was a positive meeting. So we got all these quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo. We have heard that there's teams are preparing for a blockbuster trade. We talked about that, I believe, Thursday on the football show. So with all these quarterbacks, it looks like they don't have a certain future at all.
Right.
Not at all. Like, Kirk Cousins, if I'm the Redskins, I would do anything in my power to sign Kirk Cousins. He's going to cost a lot of money, but what quarterback have you had in the past 15 years? who have you had?
I
Come on. And Jay Cutler, I kind of knew he's going to go. There's no doubt that he's going to go away from Chicago. Kaepernick, I think maybe there's a chance he would come back to the 49ers, but I don't know. I just think that
you got to restructure the thing a lot if you're going to do that.
You have to restructure that deal, and I do think if he doesn't generate a lot of interest in the free agent market, I can see Kaepernick going back to the 49ers on a cheaper deal.
Right.
Tyrod Taylor, he's going to cost a lot of money. But I believe he's set to make 27.5.
Well, that's what he's scheduled. Like, I don't know if he'll get that on the open market, but that's what he's scheduled to make as far as, if they don't cut him now kind of thing, right? Like, if they were to leave him, or no, if they were to cut him with the injury, whatever else like that, that's when the salary balloons to the $27 million. But yeah, like, I don't know if he'll get that on the open market. I think that's just the deal that they made, as far as if they kind of like a fail-safe for himself. But you have all these people, right? You're talking about Kirk Cousins, Garoppolo, Tyrod Taylor, Cutler, Kaepernick, all these people, right? And it totally throws the NFL out of whack because you generally don't see these many named quarterbacks available, right? Like, it's one of the things where Kirk Cousins, he'll probably go back to Washington because you don't generally let a young quarterback like that walk. That happens. All right, so he'll be back there probably. Congratulations. Jay Cutler, super talented, also does dumb stuff all the time. Oh, there's, someone triple covered. I got this. Then he throws the pick six, and nope, I didn't do it. That's bad. Oh, no. Kaepernick, unless they restructure it a bunch, he gone, and he'll probably, land with the team probably as a backup. Garoppolo, he's either going to get traded or be the backup again behind Tom Brady and get, a bunch of, offers to start the year. The whole thing's kind of in flux, and just that doesn't even talk about Tony Romo, the guy that probably is going to get cut and give another team a chance to, go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I personally think that the Houston Texans, if they happen to acquire or happen to sign Tony Romo, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. But let's talk about all these quarterbacks from a fantasy football perspective, because that's what this show is. Yep. So if Kirk Cousins remains with the Redskins, he's definitely a quarterback to target in the mid-rounds. Mm-hmm. He's a quarterback that has played 16 games for the past 2 years as a full-time starter. Mm-hmm. So you can count on him. It's just that he's one of those quarterbacks that has been kind of inconsistent. Like, he can have a really bad game, but he can have a really good game. Yeah, exactly. He's a quarterback that almost threw for 5,000 yards. So I do think he's someone that will be targeted in the middle rounds, because you can get a quarterback in the middle rounds. I do think a lot of fantasy players, they mainly like to draft running backs and receivers like early. That's how I like running backs. I like stacking up on running backs. I really do. But I do think Kirk Cousins is someone that will be a mid-round quarterback target. Jay Cutler, he's not going to get drafted, but
no.
I do think his future team could really, really increase his fantasy value as a popular waiver wire pickup, possibly.
Did you ever have Jay Cutler as a fantasy quarterback?
I've never had Jay Cutler, and I'm really glad I never
did.
Yeah.
It's no good. I hate him so much when he was a quarterback because I would want him to throw for 300 yards. He would never throw for more than like 210. It was just like, oh.
You know who I did have as my fantasy quarterback one time? Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, no. And like recently or like 2012?
Like 2013.
Oh, that's a little bit better.
2013, 2014, around there.
That's better than last year, but still.
No, last year I did no. I thought about picking him up last year, but I was like, no, I probably shouldn't do it, because if I do it, I'm going to regret it.
He actually didn't have a terrible year considering everything.
He did it. I think he had his best touchdown to interception ratio, but that team was so bad.
So taking Romo aside, right? Like putting him aside, because we all understand that he's the best quarterback available, right? Assuming he gets available. Cousins, Cutler, Kaepernick, Tyrod, all these people, right? All these quarterbacks that are available. From a fantasy football perspective, who would you trust the most?
Outside of Tony Romo?
Outside of Romo, because Romo...
What about Garoppolo?
Do you think he's higher than any of these guys? Because also, the thing is with Garoppolo,
I think, honestly...
I'll throw Garoppolo in there, too, because he's unknown, right? He's someone who...
Okay, if I were to rank it outside of Tony Romo, I would do Kirk Cousins, I would do Jimmy Garoppolo, Tyrod Taylor, Jay Cutler, and I'm kind of torn. I don't know who's worse, Kaepernick or Cutler.
Kaepernick. Cutler.
Okay, I'll go Cutler, Kaepernick. There you go.
Cutler at least will throw for more yards and be a little bit more accurate to where Kaepernick gets you like the ground game, stuff like that. It's different styles kind of thing. The thing with Garoppolo, because I thought about this recently, right? From a fantasy football perspective, what was it, 5 years ago or whatever it was? Like when Matt Flynn just beasted it for the Green Bay Packers over the last 2 weeks, right? That's basically what Jimmy Garoppolo did in the first 2 weeks, right? Not much different. Like, first two compared to the last two, we just loved him because he was on a championship team, right? He was on the Patriots, and it's like, oh, he knows the system. He knows what to do. Okay, we said that same thing about Matt Castle at a good year in 2008 after Brady's knee exploded, right? And don't get me wrong, Garoppolo could be great. He could be fantastic. He could be the best quarterback in the league next year, right? Also, he could have played 2 games behind a really good offense and behind a good offensive line, and he could go to the Browns, and all of a sudden, no, there he goes. Now he's running for his life, and that's another pick 6. Right? It could be a lot of different things. Like, we think he'll be good. He could be absolutely terrible. So I would probably agree with you that maybe Kirk Cousins be the number one just because he'll get you almost 5,000 yards if he's going to be playing for you. But, the people that are available, I do think Cousins is going to stay with the Washington professional team. I do have fears, though, about Garoppolo. Like, from a fantasy football perspective, I wouldn't draft him in the first 10 quarterbacks.
Okay.
Like,
that's fair. That's fair. I wouldn't either. I think he's too much of a risk to draft, like, early.
Now, if he goes to the Texans, then maybe all bets are off.
Maybe.
But if he goes to a bad team, I'm not just going to assume that he's going to have a better year than, call it, Breeze, Romo, Rodgers, Brady, Roethlisberger. Like, you can probably go through 10 quarterbacks, Cousins, that he would have a better season then. I think he'll have a good enough season, but if he gets behind a bad team, all bets are off kind of thing like that. I think that Kirk Cousins, even if he goes to a different team, I think he can still be productive in the NFL. Garoppolo, I have a lot of questions about.
Yeah, and which is fair because there's a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about Garoppolo, too. And, I do think, let's just hypothetically say that Kirk Cousins isn't with Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say he goes to a bad team, a bad quarterback-needed team. Let's just say, like, the Bears, the 49ers, the Jets, the Browns. I think he can be productive on those teams except for the Browns. That's just me.
You just think the Browns is just like, nah.
Nah, son. I would agree. I would rank as Kirk Cousins as the best free agent quarterback in this class outside of Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Outside of Tony Romo.
I mean, probably, yeah. I will. He's had 3 seasons now, basically, where you can kind of, or not 3 seasons, 2 seasons, where you can basically see the productivity, right? Like, you can at least, you have receipts for it, right? With Garoppolo, it's like you have a game and a half, and maybe that's good, maybe it's not. Tyrod Taylor, that's the thing with Tyrod Taylor too, was really good for them, right? Like, the numbers don't like pop out as like, oh my God, he was amazing. But, you take everything into account. The man had basically 3,500 yards if you include the rushing, and about, 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That's pretty good. Like, that's not like, oh my God, it's amazing, but like, you make it to the playoffs with that dude.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor he gives you touchdowns on the ground, and he's very efficient. He has only thrown 12 interceptions in 2 years.
Exactly.
So you can't forget about him as well. But I would probably target Kirk Cousins in the mid-round no matter where he goes, except for the Browns.
Yeah.
So, yeah. You got to stay away from those Browns players. Probably maybe except Terrell Pryor, but outside of that, I'm not really confident in any player on that team. Well, that's going to conclude our show, Anthony. It's going to conclude it. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. And do you have anything to say before we go?
I would like to just really, really, really hope with all of my heart. I really, really, really want so badly for this to, like how I told you, like, I think Cousins goes to the Washington. I want everything to go chaos, right? I want Tony Romo to be gone. I want Garoppolo to be gone. I want Cousins to be gone. I want everything to be insane. I want someone to go to the Texans so that way stupid Fedorovich doesn't keep getting all these yards all the time. It's fine. It's fine because I'm in a keeper league, so I still have DeAndre Hopkins. He's still on my team. I want better quarterback to go to Houston. I'm just saying. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. That's all I would like to say.
All right, cool. All right. Well, as Anthony gets a Snickers bar here, all right, I'm going to leave and have him calm down. But I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to the Goes to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. You can catch the show on a variety of platforms such as Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, and on the website, gsmcpodcast.com. You can also follow the show on a variety of social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram. The handle is at GSMC_FFootball. And you can also like us on Facebook at the Goes to Me Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast. So as always, I'm Jeremiah.
And I'm Anthony.
And I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. You guys have a great weekend.